Hello, Blartagnan here with Sanctuary's Guardian. I want to share my thoughts on this fight because I've seen a lot of people talking about it, and figured I'd do so while, dubbing over my TCC challenge for it. Using a team that doesn't use a burst, doesn't use synergy, and doesn't use core, Arciela, or Kefka. So we got Rosa, Gladio, and Tifa, who is finally unbanned, so you can darn sure I'm using her. So this is a very mechanically intensive fight. There's a lot going on, and I've seen a lot of people complaining about that. And I want to share my thoughts on that, I guess, weigh in a little bit. If you agree with what I have to say, cool. Maybe give the video a like, spread it around, share it with others. If not, I'm happy to discuss it in the comments. Let me know your thoughts, because I'm curious to hear what folks are saying about it. So the big criticism here is that basically just there's a lot of shit being thrown at us. We got that opening debuff thing with the recast. The recast itself is just very punishing with all the debuffs. The question about it ignoring debuff immunity, kind of invalidating a lot of options we would have because of that. There's the Curaga it has, both at 50% and occasionally randomly later in the fight. Just a lot of things to kind of juggle here. So, what do I think about it? Where do I stand? I want to try to address these one at a time here. The first thing that pops in my head is the synergy bias of the fight that folks are bringing up with needing Yuna. And yes, the fight definitely benefits from having Yuna because she brings the most regular cleanses in the game. That said, she's not the only option we have for this. We have a number of cleansers, Balthier, Mog, Sayador spring to mind. And Yuna herself can be used as a base call even if you don't have her LD to get rid of that initial thing of debuffs from the recast. This is important because there are other ways around the debuffs they throw at you. If you don't want to just bring, someone like a Mog or stuff like that, you can put 6 frame debuffs on your party. 6 frame buffs on your party, like you're seeing here, using a combination of Leviathan, Rosa, and Gladio to get the 6 buffs on us. And that'll basically ignore most of their mechanics aside from the fairly rampant HP damage. So I kind of get the that it definitely favors Yuna, and the synergy bias is definitely there and prevalent, but it's not to me to like offensive levels. I don't feel myself thinking like you need Yuna to get through it. Or you can get through it with teams that don't require her. It does take more, maybe more work than the average fight does, and challenging fights are part of the game. But I think maybe it isn't quite as bad as folks are considering it to be, because it does take a bit of thinking to work around it. So the thing about debuff immunity, I have to say I don't mind it. Here's why. Debuff immunity is great. We have characters like Lena, like Aerith, like Ignis who make us immune to debuffs, and that is a very useful thing to have because debuffs suck. That said, I've always kind of had a small concern that they kind of make all cleansers a little bit irrelevant. Like, what's the point of Yuna being able to cleanse debuffs every other turn if you can just bring Aerith and never get debuffed? So it's similar to how, like a character like 8 or Gladio, or not Gladio, sorry, 8 or Galuf, wrong counter tank, can completely trivialize certain stages, but other stages have guaranteed hits, and that kind of messes with them. And I think that's an okay kind of balance to have because it makes certain character traits more useful in certain situations. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And power creep is a part of the game in terms of, like, every facet of the game has power creep. Basically, every damage dealer is going to eventually become outpaced by a better damage dealer. Every debuffer is going to be outpaced by a debuffer who offers more to the party through the strength of the debuffs or the utility of the debuffs, what have you. Every support, healer, etc., etc., etc. And that's okay. That's a natural part of the growth of the game. Because this game doesn't leave characters behind. It keeps bringing them back with tuning passes. But if they always made it so, okay, debuff immunity is always going to make you immune, then cleansing is useless. Never bring Yuna, Cyan, I don't know, whoever else, Mog. That utility is always going to be second fiddle, and I don't know, that doesn't sit well with me. So I'm okay with that aspect of it personally. Honestly, the one part of this fight that I really don't like, that I feel was unnecessary, is the Curagas. The 1 to 50%, like, whatever, okay, they honestly could have just made it so the bosses had 2 million more health or whatever. They could have just done that. Feels unnecessary, but not like game-breaking. The issue I have is that there's this, let's call it a damage check, a DPT check, whatever you want to call it. Basically, during the second half of the fight, once they're below 50%, as a part of their rotation, they'll eventually use Kiraga again. And we've been trying to work out the trigger, myself and other players, and we haven't really been able to work out exactly what it does. There must be some logic behind when it happens. It's just part of the rotation, but we can't figure out the exact cause of it. Obviously, this game always has kind of struggled to convey information, and this is another case of it. But basically, my issue with it is that damage checks are fine. We've seen plenty of them in the past. Sephiroth Imster is probably the most egregious example, but we've seen damage checks, and they're a natural part of the game as well. They're a way to make it so that you're not just using... I'm trying to think of like a old damage dealer who hasn't recently been tuned. So you can't just carry, I guess, lightning through every stage. Sorry, Theologica. Or Ultimisia or whatever. It's natural for the game to kind of outpace things, and having something like a damage race where it's like, no, like you need to be able to put out a moderate amount of damage. Edward Lost Chapter, for instance, with selling Palom and Tifa. That's a fine part of the game to have. It's a healthy part of the progression. It kind of sucks because it's a kind of growing pain sort of moment. But it's okay. The problem I have with it is that it's, in this case, put alongside a fight where like there's a lot of other stuff going on. There's the debuff stuff, there's the... most of the stuff is debuff stuff, but there's also a lot of HP damage being dealt. The turn count is 70, which is not super restrictive, but restrictive enough that like you're already kind of being tasked to bring a sufficient damage team. So it felt a little necessary for it to take take all these things, that you need cleansing, you need a way to deal with the guaranteed debuffs, they're going to be regenerating their health, there's a damage check, and then on top of it, there's also this semi-random component of also, they may they're going to damage check you in the sense of if you let them take this specific action later in the fight and let them cast a second Kiraga, you're probably going to lose. And that kind of rubs me the wrong way. It just feels like too much. I should say, plenty of people are beating this fight, self-included. This is my second clear bit that I posted. I'm not going to say this fight is super toxic or the game is dying, or I know there are certain folks out there you may be aware of who will indicate that questionable game design choices are leading to the eventual death of the game. And I don't feel we're at that point. I do feel it's important to say, when a fight is overtuned or has design choices you don't agree with, it's okay to say, I don't think that was the way to go. And this is a case where this is a case for me where that is the case. Specifically because of that extra damage check component on top of the other things, because, I guess you could argue, they're selling Vaughn, I guess, because he's the new, damage dealer that we need to be bringing, but I don't know about that. I'm on the fence. It feels a bit weak to me. But yeah, I guess that kind of sums up my thoughts on this fight. It's not the most toxic fight we've seen. It is a fight that we can deal with. I don't think the game is heading in a bad direction because of it. I just feel like, as my comment towards, the state of this fight, because I've seen so many people criticizing it, if it wasn't for that Kiraga, I think we'd be dealing with a much more tame feeling on the fight. We'd feel like, oh wow, this that opening recast is bullshit, but so is the one in Sayador's fight. The fight's going to introduce new mechanics. I actually thought that the warp mechanic the boss does is really cool and interesting, especially that they do it at the threshold, so you can't just HP silence and herp derp your way through the fight with Kefka. You have to think about it, and I think that's cool. It's the fact that they took all these nifty new punishing mechanics and then added on top of that a potentially arbitrary damage check, because for all you'll see here, I was just kind of praying that they weren't going to do it again. Sorry, not again. I was just praying that they didn't have it queued up. That's I think where my gripe with this level came from. Overall, I kind of enjoyed the fight. Not enough to run it more than I think 2 or 3 times, but it's not the worst fight in the game. I just wanted to share my thoughts because I know a lot of people are coming out of the woodwork and saying that it's terrible for reasons X, Y, or Z. You'll see here I'm trying to kill B because he put the warp thing onto the guest Tifa from Theologica. Thank you, Theologica, for the guest Tifa. There we go. Don't have to worry about that now. So now we just need to finish off this guy. And we're going to go ahead and Meteor Crusher him. And unfortunately, he's going to go ahead and warp us again. But because of our 6-frame debuffs, we don't have to worry about with our other guys. It's just the Illogica who's holding us down with that warp. Luckily, he's about to switch out, so we're okay. Anyway, turning into game commentary. It's mostly because I finished my thoughts here. But I guess that's the thing. So let me know what you think. It was a very interesting fight, I thought, but I think slightly overstuffed with mechanics. I'd love to hear from you, though, and I'd love to get some dialogue going. So let me know in the comments below what you think, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Adios.